I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. In this episode, I interview Shawn Wooten, leader of the ReviveEE program, and we're going to find out what's been happening with the ReviveEE program and his relief work for Ukraine. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. My interview of Shawn Wooten on episode 18, way back in June of 2020, is one of my most listened to interviews. Many people have been inspired by Shawn's life and his example and have commented on it. I've gotten a lot of feedback from it. A lot of people have talked about it and continue to talk about it. And so I felt strongly that I need to find out what's been going on recently in his life and in his ministry. There's been so much going on with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the work that he's been doing there. In that first interview, one of the things that really inspired me was Shawn's fasting and his spirituality. And I wondered how much he actually weighed after all the 40-day fasting, the 30-day fasting. And I did a 7-day fast immediately after talking to him, and it was awesome, and have done several 7-day fasts since that time. But that was just one of the many ways that I've been inspired and personally challenged by his life and example. So I look forward to having him on the program. Shawn, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. And did you play that guitar segment? Like I see the guitar
I sure wish I did not play that. No, that's borrowed. Okay. That would be awesome. So anyway, can you give me an overview of what you've been up to since June of 2020? I mean, there's a lot been happening.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, it's great to see you. I get to see you. This is Zoom, but I'm equally inspired. And I think, Rob, you've definitely kindled a spirit in me several years ago that even inspired me to go off on a revive. I know your listeners know you, so I don't have to explain to them who you are, but I do appreciate all you do for the kingdom and to inspire churches and disciples to be their best for God. So God bless you, bro, and keep doing what you're doing. It's having a profound impact around the world. So
thank you.
I really do appreciate that.
That means a lot coming from you. So thank you.
Oh, amen. So June of 2020, basically June of 2020, we were getting ready to move to Budapest, Hungary. And actually in June, we had set 7 flags that were actually red that needed to turn green before I would tell the team to quit their jobs, give up their apartments, leave their churches, and get ready to go to Eastern Europe because we were in the middle of COVID. Praise God, by the middle of June, the entire team had raised enough money to go because basically everybody's self-funded. But miraculously, all of these 7 red flags turned green by June 15th. Now, we said it can't stay green for a week. It needs to stay green for a whole 2 months. If they stay green for 2 months, then we're a go. We're all going to go. So God blessed. We were fasting. We had a fast chain. We were praying and begging God to keep everything green. 15th of August came around and it's still green. And we said, okay, let's go. Everyone give notice, quit your job, give up your apartments, move into your parents' house, get your plane tickets. In 2 weeks, we're landing in Budapest. Literally 5 days after that, Hungary declares that they're shutting down their borders and not allowing anybody in. So here we are. Now I have a team of 24 people who are unemployed and they have nowhere to live. And we get on our regular Saturday call and I said, guys, Hungary just closed its border. Let's meet in Odessa. Let's go to Odessa. And everyone's like, okay, let's get our tickets to Odessa. About 5 days after that, now about 7 days before we launch, the Ukraine closes its borders. So now they get on the call and it's like, okay, guys, we're not going to the Ukraine. And I thought, I'm going to lose the entire call right now. Everyone's going to be like, I've had enough of this revive thing. But God bless them. They were all like, okay, so where do we go now? And I said, well, the only place we can all land is Istanbul, Turkey, which is, 99% Muslim. And I said, let's all meet there and we'll keep praying that God opens the door. So we all landed in Istanbul. Some of us ended up changing our tickets 3 times, telling our parents, so where are you going? We're going to Hungary. Oh, now we're going to the Ukraine. Now we're going to Turkey. And that's when parents also start to freak out a little bit because where you're going where?
Right.
A team of 25 American Christians are going to go to, Muslim Turkey. But God bless, we landed in Turkey. 2 weeks later, the border opened to the Ukraine. So we flew to Odessa to stay in Odessa until the border opened to Hungary. The border never opened to Hungary. So we ended up staying in Odessa, and we spent the next 9 months, basically the Revive team living in Odessa. The entire city was COVID lockdown, schools locked down, universities locked down, and we got 25 people who don't speak the language, cold contact evangelism on the street
Oh my
all
gosh.
day long. Like, who cold contacts evangelism during COVID with everyone walking around with masks and no one wants to talk to anybody? And we're out there on the streets sharing our faith, preaching the word. And God was amazing because, that first 7 months, we must have invited thousands of people, but no one on the team got COVID.
Wow.
The entire all the hospitals were filled. I mean, it was a crazy time, but God totally protected the team. And you know, we weren't able to actually the first time we saw the Odessa church was the last service we were there, because the church was in lockdown mode as well. But the Revive team kept meeting together. We had strict protocols. If you have one symptom, you got to sit out for 24 hours. Then you do a test. Then you can come back into the group because we're living on top of each other. I
Right.
mean, one
Right.
person got it, we're all going to get it. So we
Right.
have to be very careful to protect the team. But God really, really blessed. And it was tough getting going because, obviously, when you live in a place, you have friends and relationships, people you can reach out to, old schoolmates, this or that. But we're all cold contact. We don't have any relationships. But what we did is we found a cafe there in Odessa. It's called Maryberry, and it's kind of like a Starbucks. But it was funny. But I said, guys, these people are still open during the pandemic. We're just going to take over this cafe. We're going to spend all of our free time here, Bible studies here, Bible talk here, game time here, dates here. Let's just take over this place. And that's what we did. And we would meet for church service in the Bulgarian Center. And then after church, we'd bring everyone to the Maryberry. We'd have Bible talks at the Maryberry. We'd go out and share our faith, do Bible studies. We just kind of lived there. I got to know all the administrator and the owners, and they would they then, after about 2 months, they started to block off half the restaurant just for us.
Wow.
It was like Church of Christ. Like, this is our part of the restaurant. And it was incredible because, you can share your faith with people, but unless they see the community, unless they see the love and
Right.
the friendship and the hugs and the warmth, they don't really understand what it is we're talking about. And that had a tremendous impact. It was great. I was studying the Bible with this guy. His name's Edward. And, we got to the church study and I said, so tell me, what's your impression of the church? He said, you know what? I love the Maryberry Church of Christ. It's my favorite church. Like, he thought we were called the Maryberry Church of Christ, which was hilarious. But, a bunch of people started studying the Bible. Within about a month or two, we had almost 100 people studying the Bible. And
Wow.
God really blessed. We had 12 great YoPro campus, youth. 12 of them became Christians in that second semester. And then of those 12 baby Christians, they helped 6 other people become Christians. So it was an encouraging run, definitely challenging. We weren't ready for the language. The church wasn't anticipating us coming.
Wow.
It was just all last second. We landed there, but it was encouraging because the very last Sunday we were there, the church finally came out of COVID restrictions and they actually saw the Revive team for the first time in 9 months.
Oh my gosh.
And they saw these 12 baby Christians for the first time in 9 months. And
wow.
just, all this, it was incredibly inspiring, just to see and be with the church. Obviously, with the leadership, and we were connecting all along. But yeah, so that was Odessa. Little did we know at that moment, God was connecting the Revive team with the church that was going to flee into the next city we ended up in. But it was a great run. And starting in about February, while we were in Odessa, that's when we started to recruit the team for 2.0. So you're building a new team while you're still in the second half of the previous team. And then you start training that team in March and April. And one of my favorite things to do to train a Revive team is give them your book, which is necessary. It's actually the only required reading for the Revive team is to read your book. So
thank you.
But yeah, so if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't read Rob's book, although I think you have more than one book now, don't you? Or do you have more than one book?
Yeah, I think the book you're referring to is How to Plant and Grow a Church.
Yeah.
And then the second one is Courage, how to make this life count. Yeah, but
okay.
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you. I appreciate the...
I need a copy of the second one, bro.
Okay.
That'll become most likely to be our second required reading.
I'll send that to you.
But yeah, so then we had a break during the summer. It was COVID, but we got the second team ready. And this time we were planning on going to Zagreb. And the Hoovers moved there to Zagreb to get ready for the Revive team to come. And, we learned from our mistakes before. So we started the document process much earlier to make sure we could get into Croatia. Submitted everything on time. Waiting. And by mid-August, we didn't get our Croatian documents and nobody knew why. So September 1 rolls around and I was like, guys, we shouldn't land in Zagreb until we get our documents. But this time the team was from 8 different countries. So it's a very multinational team. And we kind of did the calculating that probably the best place to land would be Chisinau, Moldova. We could all land there and not need a visa. And that would be the simplest place to probably land. So the whole team lands in Chisinau, and we're thinking we just have to wait a couple weeks before we'll go to Zagreb. So we did our little introductory 2 weeks team building thing with the team, which is always very encouraging. And we still didn't have our documents. I said, well, let's just go out and share our faith and set up studies. Let's just go out and invite people to study the Bible. We're not going to be here very long. Let's just see who's open. Walk up to people and say, hey, what do you think about God? What do you think about the Bible? And then just say, would you be interested in looking at the Bible? Like, are you doing anything right now? And just ask people right there. And if they're not really willing, give them an invitation to church. But if they are open, let's just ask them to a cafe and jump right in there and start studying the Bible. Probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we had over 100 people studying the Bible.
Wow.
I mean, it was unbelievable. The openness and the desire. And I was scratching my head thinking, you know what? I'm not sure we should leave here right now.
Wow.
Even if we get do we leave all these people behind? What do we do?
Right.
So and interesting enough, we found this hotel here that has like a conference center because Chisinau was also in lockdown at that moment. No universities were meeting. You couldn't go into a hall without a COVID what is that called? Vaccine card. But in this hotel we stayed, we were the only ones here because no one's traveling. And they have like 4 meeting halls that can all hold like 100 people each, even 200.
Wow.
And the owner of the hotel said, well, if you live here, you can just use the halls. You don't need the vaccine cards. So we thought, let's just stay here. So we're all living in like this dorm that has meeting space. And we started to invite people to Sunday services and people just came out. I mean, we just had a lot of people come out. A lot of people wanted to study the Bible. We never heard back from the Croatian authorities, and it looked like, well, I guess we should just stay here. But you're only allowed to stay here for 90 days. So we started to figure out that we can't stay here more than 90 days. We submitted documents here for Moldova. We were told that wasn't going to be a problem. We basically took off for Christmas, and right as we took off for Christmas, we found out we were rejected for our documents to be able to stay in Moldova. Half the team left their stuff here and they had already left. And we found out the day after everyone left that we can't come back here. So people left their stuff here. And I said, guys, let's meet in Odessa then. Let's meet up in Odessa because we can't go back to Moldova as we're waiting to get to Croatia. So it's like, it was a little bit, you feel like homeless, right? I mean,
Right.
the pilgrims. So we take a Christmas break. We come back to Odessa. Um,
So
Ina
okay,
invited
so
her sister.
this is the Christmas of 2021, 2022, right? Am I got the time?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just a year ago.
Yeah. Just a year ago. Right. So we reappealed with our documents. Um, and we're sitting in Odessa. In the 2 weeks we're there, God bless Ina. She shared her faith with her sister. Her sister came out to church, studied the Bible all 14 days we were there, and got baptized the day we left.
Oh my gosh.
Um, but while we were sitting there in Odessa the first 2 weeks of January, I started to get calls from the embassy saying, "We're going to be invaded.
Oh my gosh.
There's going to be a war." This is a month and a half before the war actually started. The embassy, they're like, "You got to get out. You got to get out." And there's four levels of warning. Warning one is don't come. Warning two is you need to leave. Warning three is we can't protect you. You're on your own if you stay. Um, and we agreed that once we hit level three, then we have to evacuate the team. Um, so we got level three. The embassy sent the letter and said, "You are now on your own. Do not reach out to us once this starts."
Wow. And that's from
Of
the
course, nobody
US
really.
Embassy in Moldova.
U.S. Embassy in Kiev.
Oh, in Kiev.
In Kiev.
Okay.
So they were saying invasion was imminent, although I think in January most of the world still didn't think that was going to happen.
Okay, so now hold on one second. So you're in Moldova, you didn't get your visa renewed, so you had to go back to Ukraine, which was your home prior to that. And so then we're talking.
Yeah, right. So we took the team. Actually, we had planned even before we got rejected with the Moldovan documents. I mean, we've been doing this now long enough to know anything can go wrong with our documents.
Right.
So I actually told everyone, when you go home for Christmas, fly back to Odessa. And if there's not a problem, we'll just take a train across and it's all good. But if for whatever reason Moldova rejects us, we got to have somewhere to land. And I didn't want to land in Turkey.
Okay.
Because we could encourage the Odessa church, the baby Christians from the previous Revive. It won't be a waste of time if we land there in Odessa. So we all came back in Odessa. We figured we'd spend 10 days there, then go back into Moldova, but we got rejected. So the 10 days turned into 14, and that's when we started to get the calls from the embassy. And I said, okay, let's go to Turkey then. Let's wait in Turkey until we can get back into Moldova. So we took the team to Turkey. And literally, there's 21 days the government has to give you an answer whether they're going to let you get your document or not. And it was on day 20, and the director of immigration, our brother Slava, walks in, and the director of immigration says, "I'm not going to sign this. I'm not letting your people back in. I'm going to reject their documents." And he said, "Based on what?" He said, "I just don't trust your organization." Like we think he maybe wanted a bribe. We don't know what he wanted, but he wasn't going to let us back in. So Slava that night goes home and he's discouraged, and he goes out to his garage to feed the homeless dogs around his home. And there was a guy who owns the garage next to him that walks up to Slava and says, "Slava, you look really discouraged. What's wrong?" He said, "Oh, it's a long story." He said, "Well, tell me." He said, "Well, my friends, they're supposed to come, but the immigration has rejected their visas. And now they won't be able to come back for the next 80 days. They're going to have to sit in Odessa or Turkey for 80 or 90 days until they can come back to Kishinev." And there's like 100 people studying the Bible right now,
Right.
that are waiting for us to come back. And, Slav is all discouraged. And this guy, it was hilarious because this guy says, "Maybe my wife could help you." And Slav was like, "What do you mean your wife can help me? How is your wife going to help me?" And he said, "Well, my wife actually is in charge of the anti-corruption committee that investigated the Department of Immigration last year, that actually fired the previous director of the Department of Immigration because he wasn't dealing legitimately with people's documents."
Oh my gosh. Whoa.
So this guy's wife is the head of the anti-corruption, who was just in the weeds in the immigration department. And he said, "Yeah, give her a call." And so Slava calls her right there. This is from the street. It's freezing cold. He's feeding homeless dogs, and he's calling the head of the anti-corruption committee for Moldova. And this woman said, "So did you submit it? Did you do this? Did they give you a reason?" "No." "Did they do this?" "Oh." She said, "Well, I'll go in tomorrow morning. I'll fix that." So when Slava was supposed to go in the next morning at 10 a.m. to pick up our rejected documents, this woman goes in with Slava at 9:30. I mean, Slava said, when I walked in with her, everyone was like,
oh my
pins
gosh.
and needles. Like, everybody knows who this woman is. She walked into the director's office, walks out in 5 minutes and says, they'll all be signed. They've all been approved. Your friends can come home tomorrow.
Oh my
And I mean,
gosh.
there was like this
Wow.
just unbelievable last minute, last hour feeding homeless dogs at a garage at 10 p.m. that 9 o'clock the next morning, all of our documents went from being rejected to accepted.
Wow.
And within 24 hours, we were on a plane out of Istanbul back into Chisinau. We landed, I think it was like February 1st by the time we landed. 24 days later, the invasion hit. It's actually, today is the 11th month anniversary. And it was, I got a call at 5 or 6 a.m. My daughter came running down saying it happened. Our Kiev is being bombed, our home's being bombed. And the three of us just sat on the edge of the bed and just started crying. And we prayed. And immediately calls were coming in of disciples because they bombed a lot of the different cities. And we had actually prepared the Odessa church. We prepared them. We said, okay, there's options here. If something happens, either be ready to go or be ready to stay, move into house church mode, communication. If they knock out the cell towers, this is where we're going to meet, come together as house churches. We kind of set it up so
Right.
the church was a little bit ready. And when those first bombs hit, there were already several families that had made the decision if a bomb hits Odessa, they're going to cross, they're heading for Moldova. So by lunchtime, we had already 20 or 30 disciples here in our little Munchi Revive Center. And
on the day of the invasion, you already had refugees.
Yeah, they were already moving. We told them and we said, look, come stay with us. Because of COVID, this hotel was still empty. It has like 130 beds. But it was just the Revive team living here. I mean, we owned, this became home. And they had no business for 8 months. So I know the owner, everyone who works here, they're like our friends. We celebrate birthdays. We hang out together. So I went up to him and I said, look, I need more rooms. And he said, how many? I said, I need all of them. I said, we need your whole hotel. I said, can you please? And I said, if other people want to move here, let's help them find another place. But if we can move our family into this hotel, awesome. So, and that's what happened. I mean, I think for the next 2 weeks, there was no such thing as day off or bedtime or nighttime or daytime.
Oh my gosh.
You had people standing in lines to cross the border for 23, 24, 36 hours, freezing cold. They get across the border. They don't know where to go. Someone's going to meet them. Where do I go? How do I get there? Can somebody come pick me up at the border? I mean, it was nonstop. We set up these Telegram chats and we're charting everyone who's heading for the border. We know where they are. Europeans are driving from Berlin to come pick up people at the border. We mobilized the entire Western European churches. They figured out, okay, we can take brothers, but not sisters. This is a single household. We can take a dog, but not a cat. We even had people with pet rats and we're like, okay, where can the pet rat go? Like, I mean, it was this crazy. It's like hosting a conference where you house 1,000 people with a 3-day warning. And it's going to last 11 months. I mean, there's people still living in people's homes now. This hospitality has not stopped. It had to be the most unifying, inspiring reflection of Christianity I've ever seen.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. The sacrifice and the immediately desire to help and take care of and turn your life upside down to try and help somebody else. And I know many of these listeners, you sent money to Hope, you sent money to EMS, you made sacrifices too when all that happens. I know probably almost everyone in our movement did something, whether it was come on and pray or fast and in tragic moments like that, we really are a beautiful fellowship. It's got to be one of the most beautiful things. So yeah, we came back. The war started 3 weeks later, but also miraculously, from the day we came back February 1st, every single week until the week we left, there was a baptism every single week here.
Oh my gosh.
Weekly people weekly we were headed to the lake and we were headed to the pool starting February 1st for the next 18 weeks. There was somebody becoming a Christian every week. So in spite of this insanity and how we were then spread out with trying to do hope work, refugee work, church work, revive work, all these things are going on. But it was such a powerful display of love. So many people were being attracted to Christ, into the church. You know, serving the poor and taking care of people is never a distraction from saving the world. It all, you can do it all together. It actually fits nicely all together. So it was an amazing finish to the Revive 2.0 team. You know, basically the church here of 50 grew to 90, and we had 0 in the campus ministry, and now there's, I think, hold on, I think there's 14 in the campus ministry. We had maybe 6 young professionals. Now that group's like 15 or 20.
Wow.
We had 1 teen in the church. Now I think there's 6. So it's like that hope that Revive could come in and replace that missing generation of 18 to 35-year-olds. Because in most of our churches in Eastern Europe, there was a great start, but all those people are now parents. They have kids. So their kids are young preteens, but there's nobody between their kids and them that really became Christians. So there's no campus. And so what we were seeing is a lot of kids are being converted to the church and converted to being good kids for their family, but without a dream to save the world, not a dream to save their country. And I think that was one of our dreams. And I felt like God really blessed that. But as soon as we landed and we saw the openness, we also realized we needed to multiply the leadership. So we had this goal from the day I landed. My goal was to double the amount of small group leaders. We had 12, we need 24, because you can't turn a church of 50 into 100 unless you have people who will shepherd them, love them, and know how to care for them, inspire them, and help them to continue to be fruitful. So that's what we did. We started that Revive with 12 small group leaders. We finished it with 20 local. Wow. So almost half the church became small group leaders. But now the church is at 90. So we're praying, you know, to continue to expand the church, grow the church.
Okay, so
3.0. So go ahead.
Let me just ask a few questions. So there was a small church in Moldova before you guys arrived. Okay, so they're of about 50. Now I got to be honest. I'd never heard of Moldova before. Before you arrived there, I did not. I consider myself fairly worldly and knowledgeable about the world, but if you would have asked me where Moldova was, I would say it's a country in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that superheroes inhabit or something like that. You know, I just thought it was a made-up name or something. That is crazy. Yeah. Okay. So
that is so funny, because in one of our interviews, when we asked people if they want to come to Moldova, they said, "Is that the one in Princess Diary?" And we're like, "No, that's exactly. Yet, and that actually doesn't exist." So, you have good company. Don't feel.
Okay.
Most of the team didn't know where it was until they landed here. So
the original plan was, hey, we're going to go to Zagreb, Croatia with Lowell and Angie Hoover. But then God's plan changed that and said, no, you're going to go to Moldova. And that's where you guys went. And did the Hoovers go there as well?
No, they went to Zagreb.
Okay.
Yeah, they did. And they were waiting for us. And unfortunately, we never got there.
Okay. So this is kind of a situation, kind of reminds me of Paul trying to get into Asia, and he's deflected away by the Spirit and ends up going into, Philippi, into Europe at that point. Right, I mean, you must have had a lot of digging into the scriptures to figure out, hey, what in the world is God doing in all this?
Right. No, it sounds fun and it makes sense now, but at the time I thought, man, I must be really doing something wrong. This must be like a bad idea, because we can never guess it right. And then I'm even afraid to say where we're going for the next Revive, because it's like, what's the point? The only thing we know for sure is that we're not going where I say we're going. That's the only thing that's consistent.
I can't help but think about a James Bond movie where they, every scene is in a different country and you're going all over the world, just trying to track where you're going, to Turkey, to the Ukraine, to Odessa, back, all these places. It's crazy. How do you handle the stress of being responsible for all these people who are counting on your expertise and your guidance, and at the same time knowing I'm not in control of world events.
Right, right. So yeah, that's well, luckily this, so let me say a couple of things. One thing is, you know, looking back at it now, God put us in a city to connect with a church that was going to go through an unprecedented trial. And so now looking back, and then we weren't in Croatia. He put us in the neighboring country so that we could receive his people as they flee.
Wow.
And it's like, once the war hit and once the Odessa church landed back into the Revive group, back into Moldova, and we were all back together again, and we were able to facilitate all this, and we were on the ground, I thought, God had this figured out way, way ahead of time. I mean, this wasn't our engineering. We could have never figured this out, but there could be no more appropriate path for the Revive team to set us up for what's going to be definitely historically, we're Eastern Europe, right? This is the most tragic thing to ever happen in this part of the world. This is, well, maybe not ever. I mean, World War II and World War I, but at least in our generation, this was the most difficult situation. And you also scratch your head and you think, okay, why are there 2,000 Christians in the Ukraine and all the other countries are like 100 or 50 or this, why is it such a and then now there's 1,000 Christians that moved out of the Ukraine, and Western European churches used to be 1,000 members. Now there's 2,000 members in the Western European churches. It's almost like God used the Ukraine because it was a more fertile soil, but now he's moved them out, and he's putting them in the other country. It's like there's something going on here that's so above my pay grade. Wow. Like it is so above my pay grade. And God is doing something spectacular and amazing. And so I would say that. And I think we came up with this Revive idea, and then COVID hit. No one had heard of COVID when we thought of Revive.
Right.
And then COVID barely gets over, and now we have war. And it's like we're in the middle of all of this, but at the same time, we're not backing down. We're still going.
Right.
We're still out cold contact. We're still sharing. We're comforting. And I think it's just encouraged me that, and God bless his team. I just feel like I've been very blessed with the teams that have come, and they're all in, right? They're wholehearted. They raise their own money. They quit their jobs during COVID. Who quits their job during COVID?
Right.
We even had families bring their little kids. The Stephanie and Jesse,
Thomas.
They're there in Thomas in Arizona. Incredible. They brought their 2 little girls to Zagreb. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Moldova. Oh, no, not Moldova. Oh, now there's war. And they didn't go home. They stayed here the whole time, right? And there's a incredible Bible talk right now in the Moldovan church that Jesse and Stephanie started, and it's still thriving. And everyone still remembers how Jesse and Stephanie started it. It's like, and that was the dream. Come on Revive for a year and leave something behind that will change this church for generations. And I just think that's exciting. But I think for me personally, I think it was time for us to move on from the Ukraine. God raised up an eldership. He raised up a lead evangelist. We could have happily stayed there forever just because it was home.
Right.
But there was need, right? There was 16 other countries that don't look like the Ukraine as far as evangelization is concerned. And I think the Lord helped us detach from what made us most comfortable. And, we packed up our 2 suitcases, right? That's all we could take. It's all you can fly with. I had 1 big suitcase, 1 small suitcase. To this day, that's what I have. That's what I own.
Wow.
When I came home for Christmas, I brought everything I own. It's in my suitcase. And then Delta loses my suitcase. It lost my suitcase at the discipleship summit, then lost it again over Christmas. But luckily Delta lets you go shopping and buy new clothes. So I got 7 fresh t-shirts, 7 fresh socks, 7 fresh underwear, whatever. But there's also I think I feel and praise God for my wife. We feel like this is a great use of our life right now. So it's kind of our dream to do this until 2030.
Wow. Okay.
Continue to go to different countries.
Okay. I've got a lot of questions just popping up. First of all, let's talk a little bit about your wife. Your wife is Russian. You're American. Your
American.
kids Ukrainian citizens. So how
No, they're
they're
half Russian, half American.
okay, so they're half Russian, half American, but born in Ukraine or born in
So they were both born in Moscow, but my daughter would definitely say she's Ukrainian.
okay.
We moved to the Ukraine since she was 5. She went to grade school, high school, and now she's in college in Ukraine right now. So she's in her mind clearly Ukrainian.
How do you
Andrew probably sees himself as Russian, and and yeah.
I
So
mean, there's got to be so how do you
I'm
navigate
there.
the war with all of those countries converging right in the midst of your right in your family?
Um, so I think um that's a good question, and I'm not sure I could probably cover it in this podcast, but I think I'm incredibly, at least I try to be, and basically life is, because I've been overseas now for 32 years, right? I
Oh my
haven't lived in
gosh.
America for 32
Right,
years.
right.
So I was 23 when I moved. So I've spent 32 years overseas, 23 years in America. So I don't associate myself with any particular nationality. So yeah, I think, and we teach this to the church, and I host almost a daily prayer time where we just keep, okay, our citizenship is not on this earth. Um, we don't belong to, my old self died. My new self, I live for this other kingdom. Um, Now, if I do have a citizenship, I'll use that to win people.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm living in a country, I'll use that to win people. But my only goal is to win people. It's I don't have a patriotism, so to speak. I have a gratitude. I have a gratitude for the great things that America's done and provided for me. I have gratitude for Moldova right now as it protects me and takes care of me. There's gratitude, um, but there's not an allegiance, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've lived most of my life in countries that don't trust or like America. Um, and, and political things shift, right? There's a time when Ukraine liked America. There's times when it didn't. There's times when Russia was more favorable. There's times it's not. I just try and be completely, I just don't engage with it.
Got it.
Um, I feel empathy for the people. I hurt for the people.
Hmm.
Um, I want to protect them, and I want us to convert people through this. And
Right.
we've had about 5 refugees just accidentally, and I'm quoting with my fingers, accidentally wind up in this refugee center who got baptized and became Christians,
Wow.
which is such an ironic thing because they'll say the greatest thing that ever happened to them is this refugee status,
Mm.
because if they didn't become refugees, they wouldn't have become Christians. So it's so upside down. But yeah, we stay out of politics, and we always have as a family, because there's no good end to that discussion.
Right.
Um, we never discuss politics or national things. I look for the things I love about Russia, and there's still things I love about Russians. It's one of the most beautiful people, and I love the culture. I love the Ukraine. I love the people. I love Moldova. I've actually now totally fallen in love with Moldova. I could stay here my life. And something tells me when we move to Romania, I'm going to become just a huge fan of Romanians. But I just think that's the way we should be. This life's so short. Let's
Amen. Yeah, that's
just
right.
win people.
That's right. So, what are your plans going forward? You talked a little bit about 2030. Where do you see things going? What are your plans for continuing to reach Eastern Europe? I mean, you must have to still make plans, even though they may blow up as they have.
Right. Right.
Can you give at least your best guess?
Sure. Yeah. No, right now we are aimed at Bucharest, Romania for 4.0. So we're going to start working. We actually just started working on the documents. We're gathering the team. There's probably another month for people to fill out an application and come on Revive 4.0. Basically, we'll try and pick the team by March 1st or mid-March, and then we do the fundraising because we're kind of self-funded. and then we'll do some training together. And then September 1, we all land in Romania. That's the current plan. Backup plan would be Turkey or Albania or somewhere else we could get the whole team in, right? It's documents pretty much rue the day. And that's more complicated for my wife. As you pointed out, she's Russian. So
she's Russian.
like, for
That's
instance,
right.
even if you have a visa to Poland right now, they won't let a Russian in. Like, the country's locked down from anyone Russian entering the country. So if tomorrow the country we choose to go to locks us out, then we have to pick another country, because I don't really feel like doing a revive without my wife. That's not going to work.
No. Okay, so your wife still has Russian citizenship. She has naturalized through you for American citizenship.
She doesn't have an American citizenship.
Okay. So
she doesn't have a green card either. And because basically you have to live in America for 5 years to get those, to have an opportunity for those documents. And we've never wanted to leave the mission field.
Right.
So she just has a tourist visa, which, thank God, we can get tourist visas to America as long as we want.
Okay.
But so the European Union requires more.
So Shawn, what are you looking for 4.0, and who are you looking for? And if a person's interested, how can they get involved? What do they need to do? And if someone wants to give, how can they do that? Can you just talk about that?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for asking. I think we're not real picky. It takes a lot of guts and kind of a special kind of person to want to come this way anyways. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a self-filtering process. Not just anybody who signs up for this. You've got to have some conviction, some drive, some dreams, some desire. I think what we look for is, we want you to come for 10 months. We just want you to be a faithful disciple who's willing to share their faith and go out and have good chemistry with their peers and, give their hearts for 10 months. That's really what we look for. And, I think on a Revive 1.0, I think out of the 24 members, I think only 4 or 5 people had ever led a Bible talk. So it's not even Bible talk leaders who had signed up, but they all did great, and a bunch of them were fruitful, and they got a lot of training. And same thing with 2.0. And I think it's a great environment to get training, because even Jesse and Stephanie didn't come over here as full-time ministers. They weren't in the ministry. But after spending a year here, they actually got put into the full-time ministry there in Phoenix. So I think it's, you don't have to buy the farm. You don't have to stay in Eastern Europe. We think 10 months is a great opportunity. You'll get training. You'll get exposed to the mission field. You get exposed to another culture. That makes you richer, more diversified in how you treat people. Mm-hmm. It makes you more aware. You'll be able to tell crazy stories the rest of your life to your grandkids. And when special missions comes around, that's not going to be like a box you tick. It's going to be something you lived. Right. So I think the Mormons do it right. I think we should encourage more of our members, go spend a year overseas, come back, get your career going, whatever else you want to do, have kids, but take a year and you'll have friends and you'll have a connection. And at the Moldovans' 40th anniversary, my guess is Jesse and Stephanie will come back and they'll see that the church has 500 members and they're going to think, I was here when it was 50, and they'll take their kids and their grandkids, and it's just something special forever. And it costs you 10 months. It doesn't interrupt everything. It doesn't, sideline you. So I think that's what we're looking for.
I'm 100% in agreement. I think the Mormons, and I've shared this before, they have just got it down. I mean, just go out for a mission for a year or two and just take a year off. Now, if a person, is there an age restriction? Like, can you come at 60? Can you come at 40? I mean, are you looking for, between 20 and 25? What kind of a picture of a person are you looking for?
Right. So the oldest person we've ever brought on the team was 76. And the youngest person we ever brought was 18.
Wow.
So we actually had a kid just right out of high school before he went to college decide to come and do a year of Revive.
That's awesome.
On this team, we have a 20-year-old girl who did actually 1 year of college. Then she took a year off. Then she's going to go back and finish her college because I think it's important to you need to finish your education wherever you are.
Right.
But to take a gap year or come spend a year. And then, we do have then we have our Calebs, right? Those are the empty nesters, the Evstathians. And please be praying for Anne. She was just diagnosed with cancer, so she has gone back to the States. But some Caleb couples, I think that's one of our strongest suits as a movement. I mean, I walk into the Boston church or I walk into the Phoenix church. There's a hall of 1,000 people, and there's like 400 people my age or a little bit older who have been in the kingdom for like 30 years.
Exactly.
And there's 100 of them sitting in 3 rows together. Yep. Like they're where you could take just one of them and drop them in my church, and they would be the guru of all gurus.
Exactly.
Of what do I do with this? What do I do with it? I mean, there's so many ways they could be used. And I think our empty nesters, once you become an empty nester and you retire, go
get out there.
I mean, you do need to continue to build the local church. So not everyone needs to go, but you could find 10 couples and say, who's going this year? Let's fan out and let's encourage.
Right. I know Kevin and I know Kevin and Erica Lou from our church definitely want to go and are talking to you about that, and they're planning on going in September. So that's exciting. How much does a person need to save or have in their pocket to go for those 10 months?
Oh, okay. So, basically it costs about $1,000 a month to live over here in this part of the world. You can live on $1,000 a month. So when we do our fundraising, we do a fundraiser of $12,000 for the year. That's 10 months at $1,000 each, then $2,000 for travel. So you could go back and forth a couple times and be able to cover your travel expenses. So yeah, the fundraisers are $12,000, and all 3 revives we've successfully fundraised for every team member.
Wow.
We added some Eastern Europeans to the team, and obviously, a Ukrainian who's on our team right now can't raise money from their friends and connections in the Ukraine.
Right.
But I think that was another thing that was amazing when the war hit. We had 4 Russians on the team and 6 Ukrainians, all sitting in the same room when this happened.
Wow.
And the way that they loved up on each other and accepted each other and encouraged each other, it was phenomenal. And on this team, we have Russians, we have Ukrainians, we have Moldovans, as well as people from the West. But it's a special culture that Christ builds when he is the center and not current affairs or views or things that are happening. It's just all about him. And I'm just grateful for the spirituality of the team in that area.
That's great. Well, Shawn,
$12,000 is usually the amount.
That just seems like a total bargain. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for your example. You are what I would consider to be the indispensable man. You're in position at just the right time. God's used you clearly, and it's exciting, and it's gives me a great sense of respect and pride to call you brother. And I know that you inspire me and many, many people across the world for your example of commitment to Christ and his mission. So all the best to you going forward, and all the help that we can give you, we certainly want to. And I hope the listeners really respond, and people and resources flood your way.
Amen. Thanks, bro. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Amen. Thanks, bro.
Thanks for listening to the Rob Skinner podcast. If you're enjoying it, I'd like to ask your help and support through one of the following. First of all, hit the subscribe button. Secondly, let your friends know about the podcast. If you've got a podcast that you really enjoy, an episode that really hits you, just send the link to a friend and let them know about it. And finally, read and review one of my books, How to Plant and Grow a Church, or Courage, How to Make This Life Count. You can find these books on Amazon, because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, to live a no regrets life, and to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day, and make this life count.